Welcome back, everybody, to the Denver Dzogchen podcast. I'm here once again with Joseph Wagner, and today we're going to talk about a subject that it may be a little bit contentious. It's not widely accepted in the Buddhist world, but it's something that has become important to me and become important to Joe, and so I think it's worth talking about. So the subject is veganism, and I know about you, but for many years I felt like that was an extreme word. Like, vegetarians are cool because they're chill and they're just trying to, like, tone it down. But veganism was like a militant thing of like really rigid people. And I didn't want to be rigid and I still don't want to be rigid. There's no shame or judgment coming from this at all. But the thought that I watched this documentary called Christspiracy, and it's by this guy who's done several documentaries about veganism. And how, his theory is that Jesus actually may have been vegan. I don't know about that. It's not really the important part. But the important part was just really showing how the dairy industry and the egg industry in some ways can be worse than just the slaughter of animals for meat. And so with somebody who's really trying to live the Bodhisattva life, can I feel comfortable supporting these industries? Because the question that one guy said that really clicked for me was, he's like, is there such a thing as vegetarianism? Because what do they do with the dairy cow after it's done producing milk? They slaughter it. What do they do with the male chicks in the eggplants? They slaughter them immediately. What do they do with the male cows? They're immediately sold for slaughter. So I'm supporting the same thing either way. So it just became clear to me I had to make this sacrifice. And I had struggled with vegetarianism and trying to be vegan a few times. For health reasons, it can be hard. It's a sacrifice. You have to give up some of your favorite foods. Vegan cheese still isn't quite there. And so, I had to, but after seeing this documentary, I was really inspired to make this leap. And thinking about Buddhism as a path of austerity to some degree or another, we give up some things, right? And this seemed like something worth giving up. And I just was determined I'm going to find a way to do it, and I've been able to do it. And so Joe also watched this documentary and was also inspired. So Joe, will you share your feelings about this and how you kind of came to the same thoughts as I did?
Well, thanks, Damien, and thanks for wanting to talk about this. And I know for some of our listeners, this is one you're either going to immediately turn off or you're going to listen with like this kind of attitude. I suppose just to complete transparency, we are trying to convince you. But we're not trying to convince you to become vegan. That's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do is convince you to think about what you're doing in a conscious way. That is something. What is Buddhism really about? It's about overcoming ignorance. It's not about changing your lifestyle. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about overcoming ignorance. Ignorance is our enemy. And in our world, it's much more of a world of interconnectedness than it was 100 years ago or 500 years ago for that matter. And I think this is just a topic that needs to be discussed. In my own life, I became a vegetarian, not a vegan, many, many years ago. In 1992, I was studying Zen. I was very inspired, even though I was studying mostly with a Korean teacher. I was very inspired by the Chinese, in which traditionally in China, if you're a Buddhist, you're a vegetarian, and if you're a vegetarian, you're a vegan. Those are all the same thing. They never really adopted eating dairy products very much, at least traditionally. Now the world's all about dairy, but previously they never did that. So I lived in Taiwan soon after that, and it was super easy to be a vegetarian. In fact, there were no places to get pizza. I remember one of the happiest moments of my life was returning to the States and eating North Beach pizza in San Francisco, eating what I thought at the time was the most delicious meal I ever had in my life. After, living in Taiwan for a long time, where you couldn't get cheese. All this was percolating, and I was on the fence about whether I could become a vegetarian. I thought, geez, there's all these health things, and will I be able to do this? And what? And I suddenly realized one day, I remember the moment when I realized that I am a vegetarian at the moment that I think I am a vegetarian. And it really transformed my experience. And from that moment on, I haven't eaten meat at all. But I still eat cheese. I've never liked milk, so that's never been a thing for me. But I still eat cheese, and I love cheese. I haven't stopped loving cheese. And sometimes people will be like, "How did you quit eating meat? It's so good." I was like, "I never stopped loving to eat meat. I just stopped eating it." And I think what Damien is saying here, there's many little pieces, but Buddhism is primarily a religion of abandoning wrong action. It's more important to abandon wrong action than to adopt right action because we're all doing so much right action, right? We live in a world where beating people up and stealing their wallet is frowned upon if you do it physically. Of course, if you do it at a governmental level, it's totally cool. Just kidding, just kidding. But we live in a mostly altruistic society in terms of how we actually interact with each other. I went to the UPS store to pick something up today, and there was a line, and I didn't like see who I could overpower and take their spot in line. I got in line like everybody else. That's how things work. We're already doing most of that, right? Most of the people in the world are pretty good people, if not excellent people. But Buddhism is a path of abandoning activities that are based on ignorance. And I realized because of the documentary that Damien sent, that Christspiracy one, and it's the same guy who did Cowspiracy and he did What the Health. He's like been a vegan advocate. I didn't even realize what the movie was about when I started it, but by the end of the movie, I realized that I was acting entirely out of two negative aspects of myself. And those didn't go away because I changed my diet. One is ignorance, and the other one is a kind of greed. It's a kind of delicious sucking on the deliciousness of cheese. And I was in Italy over the summer, and cheese is very delicious. I ate a lot of it, and and I loved every single bite. But at some point on our path, we have to see, what am I doing here? And as Damien pointed out, to my mind, if you're participating in the meat eating industry, which includes dairy, unfortunately, then you are participating in the suffering of incredibly large numbers of beings. And as Buddhists, that doesn't make a lot of sense, you know? And again, this is not propaganda. This is not trying to force anyone to do anything except think about what you're doing. If you do it consciously and you are convinced that eating meat and cheese is good, then hey, at least you're doing it consciously. It's just that we do things so much unconsciously. Our lives are driven by unconscious forces. That's why we have these bodies, according to Buddhism, right? Because of our ignorance, being submerged in a sea of foolishness and ridiculousness in which we only can operate as me and you, and I want what I want. And that is where this comes from. I never personally had any problem giving up meat. I was like, of course, occasionally you feel like it would be excellent to eat a gyro. And in fact, I had a bite of a gyro. I'll tell a story, just like shaming myself here. I had a bite of a gyro. Why? Because my Tibetan guru, a Tirtan in the Tibetan, a high-level lama, an amazing guy, lived in the cave 16 years, said, it'd be better if you ate meat. He says that to me every time I see him. And so I was sitting in a restaurant. I was with a friend, and the friend had a gyro, and I had been talking about this, and the friend said, maybe you should have a bite of this gyro just to honor the teacher. And I was like, okay, I had it. One of the most delicious things I've ever had in my life. I was like, my mind stopped working. I was like, oh my God. And it had been, 20 years since I had a bite of a gyro. But I didn't go on eating meat. Why? Because it's wrong. I hate to say it. The right diet is not to eat animals. And what's funny in our society is that everybody loves animals. We love deer and we love dogs and we all have cats and everybody agrees. And sometimes they agree, well, they're shoveling in the hamburgers. It's crazy. It's a kind of it's just ignorance manifesting. So all I we decided to have this podcast not to try to convince you, although I think watching that movie would be interesting for everyone. Because most Tibetan Buddhists eat meat, because the lamas eat meat. And that's partially because of Tibetan tradition. It's hard to be a vegetarian traditionally in Tibet, and partially because it tastes amazing and it's easy. Our whole world is aimed at this. But my final statement about this aspect is Buddhism is about going against the grain. It's about swimming upstream. The whole world wants us to go this way. Or as Tulku Ujinals used to say, it's easy for a stone to roll downhill. In the Dharma, we're rolling the stone uphill. That's freaking hard. And one aspect of this is taking responsibility for ourselves and the responsibility for the fact that I can't remember what number they said, but it was like 50 billion animals killed every year. Some kind of number where you're just like, and for those of our readers who can't think about a billion, like myself, a billion is 1,000 piles with 1 million items in each pile. So we're talking about 57,000 piles, and each one has 1 million animals. It's nuts. And I just thought, like, why not do my part? Let's see. And you know what? Extremely easy. Haven't missed it. Amazing. It's an easy time to be vegan. So there's just Joe pontificating about this, but and also out of gratitude because I feel much more aligned with my principles. I love animals, and I sometimes say I didn't become a vegetarian because I love vegetables. I became a vegetarian because I love animals. And now I can say that with more of a heart. And that feels good. That's me.
Yeah. And and you could even move anywhere on this spectrum. You could think like I'll only buy eggs produced by small family farms. People who are just or milk that comes from somebody who owns a cow or two and they're naturally producing because some of these things it's the big factory farming makes all of it worse, right? But then if you really want to think on the deepest level, which is where I'm even getting, is this kind of using sentient beings for anything isn't really okay. To really like be sucking the energy out of a sentient being and forcing them to do my will. And of course, people's immediate argument, and I would have made this argument a million times in my life, don't worry, is what are we going to do with all these cows? And of course, it's not going to happen overnight. But if consumption goes down over time, it will transform the industry. Right? If sales go down, then people will start using their farms to produce different things. Huge, huge, huge amounts of soybeans and corn and rice are just produced to feed the animals. We could just be eating what they're being fed. So I think if we think about this carefully, that doesn't have to be this like as extreme as sometimes veganism can sound. Also, I think that when we just think about one of the benefits of this is that it's hard to have much austerity in American culture in particular. We have so much opulence and wealth and things at our fingertips. We've talked about this on previous episodes and the merit that we're spending on this lifestyle. By taking it down a notch with a positive motivation to benefit all animals is producing merit and purifying obscurations for us in a somewhat easy way. And it's something you do every day, couple times a day. So if you maintain this motivation, it's a massive practice. You're taking on a big, big practice and you can really feel the difference. I can feel the difference of the karmic cleanliness of not doing it.
True.
And the merit I'm generating, I could feel better. Like if I was on a deserted island and all there was a cow, I don't think I'd kill the cow. I don't think I actually have that in me. I think I would just die of starvation. For real. I don't think that I have the willingness, maybe I don't know, but I feel like I don't have the willingness to murder something just so I can eat. And like you're saying, the ignorance, the way that the American food is produced in particular is so disconnected from the fact you're eating an animal. It is so easy to not even imagine there's a cow having anything to do with your McDonald's hamburger. It just doesn't seem like it. It just seems like food. And so that again, like you were saying, Joe, that's ignorance. That's not thinking carefully about what we're doing. And we know now, everybody knows, and everybody knows about factory farming, and everybody knows about how terrible it is. This is a really powerful practice to take on. And I think that it has great potential for bringing benefit to beings. And I know that the current Karmapa is vegetarian and maybe even a vegan. Is an advocate for all of this. And, we had Chatrul Rinpoche who was really strict about this. And we've had Patrul Rinpoche who was a vegetarian. So it's not unheard of. I think this is really worth considering. On the diet aspect, I'm a guy who lifts weights. I want to have a fairly high protein intake. All the research shows that tofu is your king. It is a perfect protein. It has tons of leucine, which is the one that triggers muscle protein synthesis. It's inexpensive. And all of the studies show that it increases your longevity. All the scares about estrogen and stuff like that were proven wrong. You can go look it up. Ask ChatGPT. It'll clarify everything for you. But, eating tofu and tempeh is an easy way to hit your protein goals. I'm telling you, you can do it. And that's what I've done. I eat tofu or tempeh every single day. And that fills all my gaps, and my stomach can handle it because I can't eat beans, which was the reason I always had a hard time going vegetarian. Is I was like, I can't eat beans without farting my brains out. And I also want to have compassion for my wife, and so I have tried to find a diet that is compassionate for my wife and for animals. And so by eating a lot of tofu and tempeh, I've met all my protein goals, and do a protein powder made out of pea protein, and I'm good. So it can be done. And I know it can be hard. And like I said, I'm not judging. We've only been doing this for a short period of time. So we both were on the other side of just being vegetarian not very long ago. And I was eating meat not long before that. So I want you to know it doesn't come from any place of judgment, but just this is, I think, a beautiful thing and an amazing thing and something that we can really benefit from considering.
I think beautifully said and all true. And in China, which has had a Dharma culture for a lot longer than even Tibet, since like almost the first century, the there are many levels of practitioners of all kinds of Dharma. Now, I don't know what the situation is right now. We're talking pre-Mao, but it was not uncommon for people to say, like, I'm a vegetarian on Tuesdays. And that's perfectly fine. When they said vegetarian, they also meant vegan because no animal products. But that's something that everyone can do once a month, once every 6 months, only on Thanksgiving, whatever. You can tell the sacrifice has benefit. There's real merit in that. It doesn't have to be every meal. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be at all, as long as we're totally conscious. To me, if you read the life stories of so many masters, and it wasn't just Patrol, it was Shabkar, so many masters. It's very frequently Khepo Nachong. There are very frequent periods where they were practicing a lot of bodhicitta, and they suddenly had this awakening that they couldn't eat meat, and they gave up eating meat. And that is a hard thing to do in Tibet. Very rare. Adzam Palo Rinpoche is a vegetarian. It's very rare. It was a true sacrifice. It's not much of a sacrifice now. It's easy. I met a guy yesterday who said he'd been vegan since 1995. I was like, wow. He was a great big guy too. Not a skinny, like you think you're going to fade away. That's just baloney. Like, look at Damien. He can bench press me. He's tough. The the thing is, he said back then it was really hard. It's a lot easier now. And it really is. My God, our local grocery, which is in a not the most opulent neighborhood, has vegan cheese and even vegan chocolate chip cookies, which are, I found out, unfortunately, quite delicious. So it's very easy. So it's not, there are fewer and fewer reasons not to consider this. And even if you consider it just once a month, one day a month, we want to have our cake and eat it too. I get that. But it works better if you are more conscious about it. And something that I use in many contexts that fits here is a quote from Terence McKenna, the psychedelic philosopher. He said, you got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you become part of somebody else's plan. And this is a very powerful thing to remember. It fits in many areas. We have to have a plan with our diet. Right now, protein is the thing, right? This was not the thing 5 years ago. Now it's like everybody's talking protein, protein. You got protein snacks, you got protein cereal. It's like everywhere. I'm not convinced that that is not a piece of propaganda from the meat eating industry. I think they feel under attack, and I would feel under attack too. And we hold no animosity toward them. But it's good to have a plan. It doesn't mean your plan needs to be being vegan, but it needs to be being conscious, that's for sure. Because as Buddhists, our goal is to end samsara for all beings. And how can we do that when we're shoveling in, something that is directly from the suffering of an animal? And I have one more thought I want to share. After I watched that movie and I started to contemplate, what it means that we are killing for food 50 billion beings every year, that is not necessary. I've been vegetarian forever. It is not necessary to eat meat to live. Thoreau knew this, right? This was every way. Everybody's known this. I wonder if this doesn't have to do with the continual absurdity of our world, the inability of our world to really progress. We're having the same kind of wars, we're having the same kind of struggles, we're having the same kind of like down with women, down with people who aren't the same colors as craziness as we've had for literally thousands of years. We are technologically magicians, and yet kind of culturally, we're almost the same. I wondered if it didn't have to do with this, that we are literally feeding on suffering. It's quite interesting thought. I don't know if it's right. I have no idea, but it has to be contributing to the sameness of our interaction with the world. I think it's worth contemplating, especially as Buddhists, but other people who aren't Buddhists watch this. And I think it's just worth being conscious about what you do. The more conscious you are, the more you have autonomy, which is what we really want, power in our lives, power to make decisions. And if we're not making decisions, we're just unconsciously eating whatever's served to us, like we're in a prison, which we're not, then aren't we under the power of someone else? We're part of somebody else's plan, and their plan is to extract money from us primarily. That doesn't seem good. You know what I mean? So these thoughts percolated up in my mind, and it's really true. It does make you feel light. The vegan diet makes you feel physically light. It makes you feel mentally light, makes you feel emotionally light, makes you feel spiritually light. And that's good. I'm doing more exercise than I've ever done. I'm lifting weights. I'm going to yoga every day. I'm like doing a lot of exercise. Hasn't seemed to impact me. My weight didn't decrease. I have this tendency to get skinny. I'm not getting skinny. So something must be working.
Yeah. Two things I wanted to share. One is you may be familiar with this influencer, Brian Johnson. He's the guy who wants to live forever. He like takes blood from his son and all this. But he's trying to live this like meticulously studied diet. But he's also vegan. And people have asked him all the time, like, why are you vegan? And he said, the vegan part is just a choice. He said, I'm trying to move humanity into the future. And I think a future being would be more compassionate and would choose veganism. So he said, even though I think you could do this longevity diet as with meat, I'm choosing to do it vegan. So that I thought was cool, and it made me respect him, which I thought he was kind of a weirdo. But then I thought that, and I was like, that's a great thought. And it also shows that it's possible for you to be a vegan and have immaculate longevity markers, which is what he's doing on himself. So that's a good point. The other thing that hit me in this movie, this Christspiracy movie, there is this thing that has happened in history. Part of the shift from the ancient primitive traditions to the modern world religions has been from one of animal sacrifice to
Human
one
sacrifice
of,
before.
yes, and human
Human
sacrifice,
to animal.
and then to ego sacrifice, right? To sacrificing yourself in your own wants and needs on for the benefit of others. When you watch this movie, you couldn't help but get the feeling that there is still this mass ritualistic slaughter of animals going on, that it may not be directly, literally a kind of offering to a deity, but I think it is. It is like an offering of death to these samsaric energies, whatever you want to call those things. Um, but clearly a demon, right? Like what feeds on that? What feeds on the mass death of animals? And of course, corporate greed and all of this is all tied together. And so that was the thing that really hit me on this deep level when I watched that movie. That it's almost like a very worldwide spiritual culture that eating meat and having a meat industry is like if the world was one religion and that's the main activity is this like murder of massive numbers of animals. That's pretty wild, and it shows that we are pretty far behind, pretty far removed from the Star Trek kind of future, much more stuck in the Star Wars endless ups and downs thing, and so it really paints that picture. So if you have time to watch this documentary, it was free last time I checked. You can watch it on his website, and we can try and put the link in here. But I really think it's worth watching and considering that on some kind of deep energetic level, something like that is also happening.
I think
That
that's
when you
beautiful.
feed these big demons of greed and selfishness, that might be part of it.
Well said. Yeah, I thought it's all fits together, right? It all fits together. It's very interesting. What is perpetuating the same kind of energy in our world? Well, maybe it is actual sacrifice. Nobody looks at it that way. It's not like at the temple in Jerusalem where they killed like 1 million animals every day or some crazy thing. I just learned that. I was like, ah, but not like that. But for our health, I'm important. This is exactly the enemy of the Dharma. It is the exact wrong view. So here we are practicing and we're thinking, oh, may all beings be saved. And yeah, I want another piece of that chicken. It's kind of nuts. It's sort of funny. And I'm a participant. I'm a participant too. It's not like we're saying we're way better than you. It's not like that. We're trying, we're seeing. And so far, it's paying out. It's paying off. It's cheaper. It's easy. It tastes great. You feel good. And it's good for longevity. It has a lot of benefits. It's very interesting. So we throw it out there around this new year because, hey, everybody gets a chance. We get a chance to improve ourselves. And what is Buddhism except about taking responsibility for oneself? So, that's the main thing. So I thank you for listening. It's very interesting for me. My mind's getting blown. This is new to me too.
Yeah, I think that there's so much value in just considering this. And yeah, like one of my teachers, Togoyeshi Rinpoche, he told me, if you're going to eat meat, only eat it like once a day or once a week or so. There's all kinds of infinite ways that you can start to move in this direction. And like even the word vegan, I kind of uncomfortable with because sometimes somebody gives me a cookie and I just eat it because, I don't know, and they're giving me a cookie. So like vegan's the aim, right? Like I'm not gonna be like, no, there might be egg in that, or there might be. So it's like there's no perfection. Perfectionism, when we let that be the enemy of the good, is a big, big danger. It's just like point the boat in the right direction.
Oh,
Just aim towards the least harm possible. Of course, there's no perfection. Of course, small animals get killed in the production and agriculture and all of this. Yes, 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 and yes. But we're just going to aim the boat and do our best. And to me, this is a worthwhile sacrifice that we can make that really can help us on our path and really help the world on so many levels. Climate change, all these things. There's massive number of benefits. So just consider it. Just from us, we kind of reluctantly pass this on. I felt as weird about that word as you probably do. It's it's uncomfortable because we have this idea of like kind of evangelistic vegans, right?
yeah, yeah.
Pouring blood on celebrities or whatever. And so we're not doing that. We're just open the dialogue and consider it and continue to
Broaden your
consider.
mind, right? What does he
Yeah.
say in the Matrix? Expand your mind. That's what the Buddha said. That's all we're saying here.
Yep. Just consider it, examine it, and don't and expose yourself. This was big for me too. Watch those videos you don't want to watch.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to see that stuff. but
Right.
to
Why?
not look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Because it
we need to look
sucks.
at
Because you know it's wrong. It's obvious. It's so obvious. It's illegal to
it. Yeah,
post slaughterhouse videos online. Illegal. Why? Because it will hurt the meat industry.
yeah,
That's very weird, you know? Isn't that being part of somebody else's plan in the
yeah.
worst possible way? It's kind of weird, you know?
Totally. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope this inspires you. Let us know in the comments if it has inspired you, if you decide to give it a try or maybe just do it part of the time or something like that. Any of those things, put it in the comments. Let us know. We really appreciate it. And as always, I appreciate you listening and liking or subscribing or sharing this with your friends. All those things. We really appreciate all of you. It really helps this show keep going, inspire Joe and I to keep doing it and come together for you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.